Hey guys, this is Kerry, and in this video we're going to be learning about a new tool called CSS Grid. So the idea with CSS Grid is, up till now we've been doing some relatively simple layouts. In this video we're going to introduce CSS Grid, which will enable us to make more complex layouts like the two examples right here. But in terms of a real page designed with CSS Grid, here's my course webpage for Algebra 2, and you can see that the layout is a little more complex than anything we've done before. So you've got these boxes here, you've got a sidebar, you have a hero image, you've got a nav bar, and then you also have a header bar. And within the hero image, you've got a couple of different images or text. So let's introduce this tool without further ado. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to be playing with these sort of fun looking emoji things. So I'm going to be giving you guys a partially made example, and then you're going to be taking that example and transforming it using CSS Grid into the desired solution. So let's take a look at example number 1. So example 1 is right here. Let me slide that over so you can also see the code. And I've actually and this is the way it's going to work in class, I've actually gotten a head start with the code for you guys, so you don't have to code everything from scratch. So looking through the code, we've got a big container, which in this diagram is this large box. Here, well, you'll see it more clearly later, but in the code you'll see that you've got one div here. This is a box. It is a container that contains about 6 other divs. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add some style of our own to this. I've actually, you'll see this here, I linked in another style sheet with some styles that I wrote to get you guys started. But you don't have to look at that sheet, so I'm going to close that. What you're going to do is you're going to add some styles on top of the LinkedIn styles sheet so that it looks like this. So the way that CSS Grid works is you have two different things. You've got a container, and then you have items inside the container. So we're going to start off styling the container. So it looks like the container has a class of container. So I'll do .container. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say that this container should be displayed using CSS Grid. So you type display.grid. Now the next thing that you're going to do is you actually have to build the grid. So this layout on the left will show you how to build the grid. It has 2 columns. So I'm going to type in grid template columns. I just type GTC and then tab, and it highlights grid template columns. The first column is 100 pixels. The next column is 1 FR. So an FR is a new unit for us, and what FR stands for is it has to do with the free space. So this is going to do 100 pixels for the first column, and then all of the leftover space in the window is going to be occupied by the second column. So let's see what that looks like. Hi, I'm actually really busy. I'm shooting a video. Sorry, guys. So continuing on, you've got 100 pixels and then 1 free space. All right, let's also add some rows to that. So we've got grid template rows, and for our rows we've got 50 pixels. Oh, I see a typo. Sorry guys, there shouldn't be a comma there. I got distracted. So grid template columns should have no comma. Grid template rows should be 50 pixels for the first row, 200 pixels for the next row, and 1 free area for the last. So let's see how this looks. So you can actually see that Grid is actually smart enough to automatically place things into the grid once you build it. So you can see the columns. You've got a 100 pixel column here. This one takes up the rest of the free space. This one takes up 50 columns on top, 200 columns here, or sorry, 50 pixels here, 200 pixels here, and then 1 times the free space, so all of leftover space here. And what you'll see is that as I resize it, the ones that have units of FR change in size, whereas the ones that have 50 pixels, like this top row, don't actually resize. So you have a pretty dynamic layout already that's going to look good on a variety of different screens. All right, comparing things though, it looks like CSS Grid was trying to be smart, but unfortunately it placed a bunch of things in the wrong spots. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at now how you actually place these items in the correct spots. So the way that you do that is you use another property called grid template areas. So for grid template areas, I like to press an enter here and then tab over so it's clearly inside of here. So now what we're going to do is box by box try to designate which thing is going to go in each box. So it looks like the first cell in our table is going to be blue, so I'll use a B for that. And I could type the whole word blue, but I think I'm just going to stick with B. The next one is going to be green, so I'll type a G. This is my whole first row, blue and then green. I press enter. My second row is going to be red and then yellow. I press enter. My third row is going to be purple and then orange. Because this is my last row, I have to end this with a semicolon. So I do. I save it, I refresh, and nothing's changed. So the reason why nothing's changed is even though I've labeled these areas B, G, R, Y, P, and O, I have to now style the items so that they actually take up the right areas. So now, starting with blue, I'm going to say select the blue, the thing with ID blue, and that should be in grid area B. Even though it doesn't color code it, that's correct. The thing with ID green should be in grid area green, G. The thing with ID red should be in grid area R. The thing with, and I'm just using B, G, R, Y, P, and O from my previous grid template areas. The thing with ID purple should be in grid area purple. The thing with ID yellow should be in grid area yellow. The thing with ID orange should be in grid area orange. So now when I save it and refresh it, you'll notice that yellow has actually moved to the yellow spot, orange is in the orange spot, and purple is in the purple spot. So we actually have constructed our first diagram completely correctly. It looks slightly different because of how it changes when you resize it, but you can see that this is the correct grid layout. Let's take a look at another layout in example 2. So in example 2, we're going to be recreating this layout. So just like before, I'm going to give you guys some partially completed code. So this time we've got a container box, which has within it a blue, green, red, and yellow divs. Each of those divs has an emoji, and I was trying to be clever, so you've got the bear, the guitar, G for green, R, rocket for red, yin yang, yellow, so it starts with the same letter. All right, let's see if we can place things. So first things first, before we talk about our items, we need to set up the container. So select the thing with class container. We're going to display this using CSS Grid. Next, we need to set up a grid template columns. So this is our way of articulating the length of the columns. So our columns are going to be 1 FR, 3 FR, 2 FR. So make sure you don't do what I did originally with just putting commas. There's no commas here, it's just a list of items. And then we've got grid template rows. So we've got 50 pixels for the first row, and then 1 FR for the second row. So let's save this and refresh it. So again, CSS Grid is trying to be smart and place the items into the proper cells. It will just use, so it looks like there are 1, 2, 3, 4 cells, so it basically just places these in the first cells. So you might be curious, what does it mean when we have 1 FR, 3 FR, and 2 FR? So what that basically means is if you consider all of the length here, because they're all FR units, none of these are fixed measurements. So when you resize it, you'll see that all of the column sizes change. All right, so let's see. What 1 FR means is if you add these up, you get 6, right? 1 plus 3 plus 2. So it's treating this whole thing as though it's 6 units long. 1 FR means it gets 1/6 of the free space. 3 FR means it gets 3/6, half of the free space. 2 FR means it gets 2 out of the total of 6, 2/6 of the free space. So a little bit complicated, but basically these are ratios. So this is 1 to 3 to 2 ratio. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the grid template areas so we can place things. For the grid template areas, we press enter, tab over. Now this is unusual. It looks like blue is not just contained to one cell. Blue is going to be taking up 1, 2, 3 cells. So we're going to put the whole first row, blue for the first cell, blue for the second cell, blue for the third cell. For our next row, we're going to have green, we're going to have red, and we're going to have yellow. This is our final row, so we'll end it with a semicolon. The last thing we have to do is we have to place our items. So we're going to say hashtag blue. This item, now we're talking about items, not the container. This item is going to have grid area B because it's going to take up all three of these. Hashtag green. This item is going to have grid area green because it takes up just the green cell, G, right here. This one, hashtag red, is going to take up the R cell, and this one, hashtag yellow, is going to take up grid area, the yellow cell. So we'll save it, and we refresh it. And now you can see that the blue one is taking up the entire top row right here, because all three of these made up the B template combined. So now if you resize it, it will dynamically change in size. You've got a nice layout. You could imagine that this, instead of being a bear up here, could be a header. This could be a sidebar with maybe some links in it. This could be the main content of the page instead of a rocket. And then over here in the yin-yang symbol, perhaps this is some secondary content, like maybe some links to recommended users or some of your most followed web pages. So CSS Grid is super useful because it will enable you to create a huge variety of different grid layouts. There are 3 steps to CSS Grid. 1, take the container and turn it and chop it up into different cells using grid template columns and grid template rows. Next, label your areas so you can place items. The final step, go into the items themselves and place the items by using grid area to place them in the proper spots. I hope this video was helpful. CSS Grid is going to be a very helpful tool. That's the title of our entire second unit, CSS Grid. So we're going to get a lot of practice in class tomorrow or Monday practicing with this tool. All right, best. See you guys.